Episode 3. It's a small country, but sharp. Very sharp. What images pops into your mind when you hear the word Sweden? Let me take a guess. IKEA. Meatballs, blonde women and polar bears. But what do you really know about Sweden? As we've said in previous episodes, the basis for the deep state's power lies in the creation of money. The idea of central banking had to have come from somewhere. Would you be surprised to learn that the very first central bank was established in Sweden over 350 years ago, in the year 1668? This system of central banking then spread to London, with the creation of the Bank of England in 1694. The Bank of England's privately issued banknotes later became the leading currency of the world. After the First World War, the baton was handed over to the U.S. Federal Reserve System, which was founded in 1913, with great influence by the European bankers. Among these was the Warburg family. The Warburg family's connections to Sweden and the Wallenberg family are significant, and manifested themselves strongly in connection with the Second World War. In 1930, the top of the banking system moved to Basel, Switzerland, with the founding of the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS. The BIS plays a key role, behind the scenes, in the global financial system, as the central bank of central banks. Thomas Harrington McKittrick. His involvement in the Bank for International Settlements began in 1931, when he joined the German Credits Arbitration Committee, which ruled in disputes between German commercial banks. One of the other two members was Marcus Wallenberg, from Stockholm's Enskilda Bank, who taught McKittrick about the complicated international finances. Marcus and his brother Jacob were two of the most powerful bankers in the world. During the Second World War, the Wallenberg brothers used their Enskilda Bank to play both sides and reap huge profits. In May 1939, McKittrick was offered the post of president of the BIS, which he quickly accepted. Once in office, Marcus Wallenberg remained his most important mentor, teaching the American banker how to negotiate between opposing European powers, just as Wallenberg himself had done so skillfully. McKittrick was also a close family friend of Allen Dulles, the head of the intelligence service and the CIA's predecessor, the OSS, which was also based in Switzerland during World War II. The same Allen Dulles who would later defend the Wallenberg brothers in the subsequent Bosch affair, where they were accused of acting as a front for German business interests. Now, back to the Warburg family. M. Warburg & Company was a very large Jewish-owned banking company in Hamburg. It was led for more than 40 years before the war by Max Warburg, who had good relations with the Minister of Economic Affairs and the governor of the Riksbank, Hjalmar Schacht. Schacht later became known as Hitler's banker. Already in the first days of January 1937, preliminary discussions took place between Max Warburg and Jacob Wallenberg regarding a Swedish co-ownership of the Warburg Bank. The initiative for the discussions was taken, as far as can be judged from the documents now found in the Wallenberg archives, by Max Warburg. The parties then met at Hotel Angleté in Copenhagen. 1 month later, on February 6, Jacob Wallenberg wrote to Max Warburg that under certain conditions there was an interest in the proposal. The conditions were 3. First, German authorities must see co-ownership as desirable. Secondly, the co-ownership must be channeled through a company, since the Swedish Banking Act did not allow Stockholm's Enskilda Bank, which Wallenberg owned, to own part of a foreign bank. Finally, the condition was set that the deal would be financed with so-called barrier land, which could only be used in Germany. Max Warburg soon accepted these terms, but at the same time explained that the matter was not relevant for the time being. At a somewhat later contact, he explained that at the moment it was considered most appropriate not to wake the sleeping bear. When Schacht was succeeded as Minister of Economic Affairs by Hermann Göring in the autumn of 1937, Max Warburg was clearly told that he had to transfer his bank to Arians. At the same time, the Ministry of Economic Affairs had decided that the bank would be kept intact in order to preserve its foreign loans and foreign connections. At the beginning of 1938, Warburg's was therefore looking for friendly buyers for the bank in several places. Now it also became seriously relevant that Stockholm's Enskilda Bank would become or mediate limited partners in the Warburg Bank. About the intended deal, which never happened, several documents are preserved in the Wallenberg archives. In June and July 1938, there was some correspondence on the part of both Warburg and Stockholm's Enskilda Bank with Oberfinance President Hamburg regarding the implementation of the deal. It was stated by Stockholm's Enskilda Bank that the Swedish co-ownership must be channeled via a company and that Franz Liljenroth at Investor could be a suitable representative. The idea was now that Stockholm's Enskilda Bank would sell shares in the German company IG Farben to finance co-ownership. On the 18th of July, Stockholm's Enskilda Bank wrote to the Warburg Bank, requesting information on whether the German authorities would, in principle, accept such a solution. They did not want to risk a rejection. At the same time, it was stated that the required IG Farben shares were available in Berlin. Warburgs also contacted the Rikswirtschaftsministerium on the matter, and wrote to Stockholm's Enskilda Bank on the 10th of August that the purpose of that contact was to find out if the concerns about the financing proposal that had emerged remained. According to Warburgs, this essential point must be clarified before a corresponding application is made. Warburgs finally promised to get in touch when the survey yielded results. Shortly afterwards, the Warburg Bank was Aryanized in another way. The management was taken over by Rudolf Brinkmann and Paul Wartz. They were considered Aryan, but were also both closely related to the Warburg family for a long time. On August 22, 1938, Eric Warburg wrote to Jacob Wallenberg to introduce the bank's new CEO, Rudolf Brinkmann, whom he called his longtime friend and co-worker, as general manager of the company. Eric Warburg added that he hardly needed to tell Jacob Wallenberg how strongly Warburgs would welcome if the many years of friendly relations between Stockholm's Enskilda Bank and the Warburg Bank could continue with the new company and lead to increased business. On September 6, 1938, Marcus Wallenberg recorded a visit by Eric Warburg in his work diary. Everything wrapped up and ready by September 7th. Had not yet decided what he would do in America. He did not know if his father wanted to leave Germany, which he thought was stupid. In September, the correspondence between the two banks resumed. In a personal letter to Rolf Kallisendorf at Stockholm's Enskilda Bank on the 26th of September, Brinkmann asks whether the Swedish bank, despite the changed circumstances, insisted on its desire to join as a limited partner. Brinkmann expresses that such a contribution would of course be appreciated and that he naturally does not want to anticipate a decision from Stockholm's Enskilda Bank. Kallisendorf replies a few days later that in view of the changed circumstances it was considered necessary to refrain from the deal. Maybe everything is just coincidences. Maybe there is no deep state, and the Wallenbergs are just lucky in business. Well, let us present some more coincidences then. In the spring of 1931, Swiss banker Felix Summary was visiting Berlin. Summary was strongly affiliated with the Swiss Banking Association, and had also made a name for himself as an economic theorist within the Ministry of Finance in Berlin. When asked how long the current world crisis would last, he replied that 3 events must first occur before one could imagine an upward turn. The banking system in Vienna and Berlin must be rehabilitated, meaning reformed in favor of IG Farben. Chairman of the Committee for the Reform of the German Banking System was called, as luck would have it, Wallenberg. The British pound must free itself from gold, meaning that debt and currency expansion were not slowed by the supply of gold. And the Swede, Ivo Kruger's match monopoly, must collapse. In the early summer of 1931, the banks indeed crashed, and late in the summer, the pound was devalued. This process was controlled by the Anglo-Zionist banking hegemony, entirely on its own. When Felix Summary later came to Berlin again in the early spring, just at the turn of the month February-March 1932, he was asked if they really still had to wait for the third event to occur. Felix Summary did not take anything back at all, but instead he frankly assured that the Kruger Group would be out of business in a very short time. Remember from our last episode, what happened to Eva Kruger just a couple of days later? If anyone still thinks that it's all just coincidences, then follow us into the next episode, and you might just change your mind. Thank you for listening.